This is CBC Vancouver News.
I was then beginning to feel very alarmed and panicked, and as though this must be happening to somebody else.
A visitor to Canada says he nearly lost his foot when a flight crew couldn't get him off his plane. Plus,
it's some extras, but we are happy to do it because we're doing for the environment, and our customers are happy with it.
BC expands its ban on single-use plastic items, the benefits and potential costs. And
at this time of year is unusual to get as many golfers as we've had.
Warm enough for you? From Cranbrook to Kamloops, Prince George to the South Coast, BC is warm in winter so far because of El Nino and climate change.
I wish it was like this every year.
I really miss the snow. It worked in Canada.
Good evening, I'm Dan Burritt. Thanks for joining us. A British man who visited this country says he became stranded on a plane in Vancouver for hours when the flight crew said no wheelchair assistance was available for him. Paramedics then used the plane's food trolleys to get him out. As Michelle Gassoub reports on the latest in a series of disturbing stories about a lack of accessibility on airlines. And just a warning for you, this story contains images some people may find upsetting.
Jeffrey Schneiderman was looking forward to a month-long holiday in BC last summer, but the moment he landed in Vancouver, the trip took a turn.
It was just sheer terror, so I just had to try and close my eyes and pray.
Schneiderman, who has MS and uses a wheelchair, was told by the airline crew the airport didn't have the specialized equipment known as an Eagle Lift, demonstrated in this video, that would help him off the plane. After 2 hours of sitting on the tarmac, British Airways called paramedics for help.
I was then beginning to feel very alarmed and panicked, and as though this must be happening to somebody else.
The paramedics put him on a stretcher, then used 2 of these carts normally used to serve passengers food and drinks to finally get him out.
So they didn't have any way of clipping them or keeping them together other than manually while they were pushing. And I suppose they were doing their best to try and keep me level and on the food carts. But food carts are just not designed to transport people.
The incident left Schneiderman bedridden during his holiday and with a pressure sore that became septic. His foot was so damaged, it came close to being amputated. But the toll of the incident wasn't just physical.
It was just a horror story. I was having panic attacks about it, and panic episodes about being trapped.
Schneiderman is just the latest passenger arriving in Vancouver in a wheelchair to share a harrowing story with CBC News. In April, one passenger was injured as crews struggled to get him off a flight. In May, another passenger was dropped on the floor. This aviation expert says there's a gap in accountability. In Schneiderman's case, a failure to get proper equipment created an especially dangerous situation.
Even with the wide variety of emergency equipment that they have at their disposal, they deemed the best option to be the catering carts on board the aircraft. And that, to me, is very shocking.
And Michelle Gassoub joins us now. Michelle, Schneiderman has gotten some compensation for his ordeal, but there is still plenty of questions.
Yeah, Schneiderman did get a settlement of £1,500 from British Airways. Now, that's roughly $2,500. He says that's not nearly enough to cover the medical costs of what he went through. As for Vancouver International Airport, officials say they do have Eagle Lifts available, but it's up to each individual airline to work with ground crews to ensure passengers can get on and off of planes safely.
Michelle Gassoub, thanks very much. Families of victims from a deadly bus crash in the Okanogan last Christmas Eve say they are feeling unsatisfied. Prosecutors will not be laying charges in the collision that killed 4 people and sent dozens more to hospital. As Leanne Young reports, police say bad weather was a factor in the crash, and they can't find anyone to blame.
Kathy Lee, the 18-year-old just trying to get home for the holidays. Karnjot Singh Sodhi, the 41-year-old, a new immigrant about to celebrate Christmas in Canada. Just 2 of the 4 people killed last Christmas Eve and sent at least 3 dozen others to hospital. Their bus rolled over on an icy, treacherous journey from Kelowna to Vancouver. Today, the BC Prosecution Service says it won't be laying charges in the crash. Kawinder Singh is upset no one will be held responsible for the death of his cousin.
I don't say that the driver's fault, but the driver's fault, why he did not refuse. With that, I don't go that the weather condition is not good. Yeah, I feel very bad because policeman said that due to the road conditions and the day is very bad, that's why that accident is happened. That driver has no any fault.
The vehicle operator, Calgary's e-bus, would not comment. RCMP led the investigation and sent its report to Crown Counsel, which typically includes charge recommendations. But the decision is up to Crown, based on the likelihood of a conviction and public interest. In a statement, Mounties say road and weather conditions were contributing factors to the crash. Singh, a commercial truck driver himself, says the province needs to step up.
Every year I saw many of the happens in that area, from Kelowna to Surrey or from Kamloops to Coquihalla. It's not just the driver's fault. It's the fault of the BC government, failure of the BC government. They did not clean the road.
The Ministry of Transportation says contractors were out that night salting and plowing the roads, adding its enforcement agency inspected the bus and sent findings to RCMP, but would not comment further. Little comfort for families like Singh's.
There is no good justice.
Leanne Young, CBC News, Vancouver.
Police on Vancouver Island say a woman has now been charged with forgery and impersonation after she allegedly applied for a nursing job with fake documents. Police say Sharibel Talau is accused of a forged marriage certificate, Alberta health card, Canadian citizenship certificate, a name change affidavit, and charged with fraudulently impersonating someone by the name of Eve Engelhart. Investigators say they were contacted by staff at Vancouver Island Health when Talau applied for a nursing position using suspicious documents. Further charges are possible. Richmond Hospital's redevelopment project has opened its updated cancer care clinic after it was refurbished and moved.
We expect to see in the next 10 years a move from 30,000 cancer diagnoses a year to 45,000. And we need to respond to that by building out a dynamic system that improves cancer care and delivers service everywhere.
The clinic is part of phase 1 of the redevelopment project. It's slated to see 1,000 patients a year and will mean less travel for vital cancer care. Phase 2 is set to start this spring, with the entire project expected to be done by 2031. Meanwhile, almost all of the 666 international medical graduates registered in BC this year are now working as doctors, with more than half in family medicine. This comes amid ongoing healthcare challenges like hospital overcrowding and many people still not finding a family doctor. Adrian Dick says as many as 700 physicians who weren't practicing family medicine a year ago are now working in the system. Vancouver police say a quarter of the arrests they made this year for shoplifting happened in just over 2 weeks, and it was recent. The department says it made 268 arrests, seized 31 weapons, and recovered more than $100,000 worth of stolen merchandise between November 30th and December 15th. This year, plainclothes officers arrested shoplifters at about 30 retailers across the city and recovered nearly $300,000 in stolen merchandise. This map shows where police say shoplifting is happening across the city. Most of it is downtown. Well, starting today, your experience at local shops and cafes may be a bit different. In line with the federal government's ban on single-use items, the province is expanding its efforts to tackle hard-to-recycle plastics. As Janella Hamilton reports, the plastics ban is welcome news for many in BC, but could come at an added cost.
Niaz Tagoli is the manager of Le Petit Belge on Robson Street.
At the moment, we have just paper bags, and we have like to-go cups. Everything is paper.
She says the transition away from some single-use plastics has been relatively smooth, but alternatives like paper bags do cost more.
It's some extras, but we are happy to do it because we're doing for the environment, and our customers are happy with it.
Vancouver is among a list of more than 20 municipalities in BC that have already made the move to ban some single-use plastics. And now the new federal rules will mean businesses across the country are banned from giving out, manufacturing, and importing plastic items like checkout bags, cutlery, food serviceware, stir sticks, and straws, with some exceptions.
Retailers are having to pay more for these items. The second impact is, and in the end, there's likely an impact to consumer prices as well. These price increases coming at a time of high inflation, that makes it very challenging.
In BC specifically, restaurants can no longer offer plastic cup lids, sleeves, condiments, and napkins unless a customer asks. The province says the added layer of rules is an effort to reduce waste and pollution.
We've seen studies recently that say it's not just the plastics ending up in the ocean. They break down, there's microplastics in the air, it ends up in our food, and it ends up in our bodies.
Overall, I think it's a good thing. It's just building that new habit.
I think it's great, to be honest, because I think more and more people are using like tote bags like this or like reusable stuff. I think it makes sense.
The Retail Council says its members are on board, but the timing of the latest rules is not ideal.
It is a busy time of year and hard to make changes at the point of sale.
The new federal regulations will happen in a multi-phased approach, with more materials being added to the list in the coming months. Janella Hamilton, CBC News, Vancouver.
This year's wildfire season in BC was the most destructive ever recorded, and new research shows the fallout is impacting killer whales. A UBC researcher says his team detected toxic chemicals in orcas off BC's coast, the same types of chemicals in oil spills and wildfire smoke. The researchers analyzed muscle and liver samples from 6 transient and 6 southern resident orcas in the Pacific between 2006 and 2018. One expert says the findings are a way to gauge the marine environment health.
Killer whales, which are the canaries in the coal mine, the irony that we select this topic as a canary of the coal mine because they're telling us how healthy or how polluted are our marine environment, our food web, and the marine biodiversity in BC.
Research suggests those toxins are carcinogenic and can be transferred from mother to fetus, meaning the impacts can last over generations. New data from Statistics Canada shows BC's population is continuing to grow. At the same time, though, the number of people deciding to ditch our province for somewhere else in Canada is also going up. And as Justin McElroy explains, a lot of them are going to one particular province.
More people are leaving BC for the rest of Canada than coming to BC from the rest of Canada, and it's happening at a pace not seen in 2 decades. That's not based on anecdotes, but on data by the federal government. Here is a chart. It shows something called net interprovincial migration in British Columbia over the last 20 years in 3-month quarterly stints. Now, after years of people from across the country coming here, BC has lost people to the rest of Canada over the last 5 quarters. Specifically, there was a net loss of 4,634 people from July to September of this year, and more than half of them are heading to Alberta. Now, a lot of people online speculated why, with many focusing on housing costs. But the BC government says they aren't too concerned, and it's because of a different chart. It shows immigration numbers to BC over that exact same time period. Now, the number of people leaving the province to other provinces is more than balanced out by the number of new immigrants coming to British Columbia in recent years. And that's what the housing minister wants to focus on.
That is some of the highest numbers since 1961. So people are coming. They see opportunity here. They're coming. It's vitally important that we have the infrastructure, the housing, the healthcare, the schools to support that type of growth.
Left unsaid by the minister was whether some people decide that there isn't enough of that infrastructure and housing available and then leave for another province. Questions we might have more answers for in the next 3 months when the next set of numbers come out. Justin McElroy, CBC News, Vancouver.
It does not look like a white Christmas will be here for many British Columbians. Temperatures are warmer than usual across much of our province. And as Joel Ballard reports, experts say it will stay that way for a while.
It's an uncommon sight. Golfers teeing off at Mount Paul Golf Course in Kamloops days before Christmas.
The weather's nice, so it's good for golfing.
And with no snow, the greens have stayed open.
At this time of year is unusual to get as many golfers as we've had.
It's been a warm December.
Our temperatures have generally been above normal for a really long time.
And not just in Kamloops, but across the province, like in Cranbrook, where it's more slushy than snowy.
No, I'm not much of a skier or a snowboarder or anything like that. I'm sure people who do love that would find it kind of sad, but for me, I just love it.
Kelowna, where the parks are green.
You know, I prefer the milder temperatures. I wish it was like this every year.
Even Prince George, where it's raining.
I really miss the snow. We're in Canada, you know?
Normally by this time of the year, the Prince George Ice Oval is packed with skaters enjoying the outdoors. But this year, the facility hasn't been able to open.
We had one brief window of opportunity about a week ago where we were doing some flooding. But since then we've had to stop flooding. There's no point when it's well above zero and raining.
Down in Metro Vancouver, the weather forced the closure of a pair of local ski hills this week, with runs almost as brown as they are white. Environment Canada says the weather should cool a bit by the weekend, but temperatures could rise again next week and will likely persist.
We are entering that time period where El Nino does play a role on our weather here in North America. So what we can expect likely to see from El Nino is a milder than normal winters.
That's not a problem for the golfers back at the course in Kamloops.
It was one day there, it was so frozen, we couldn't get the tees in the ground. And it just so happened that one of the fellows had a drill in the car. So we made a hole and put the tee in, and away we went.
So what could keep them away? Snow. Joel Ballard, CBC News, Vancouver.
If you've had the cold, the flu, or COVID in the last few weeks, join the club. How healthcare workers are coping with new waves. Next. And hello to everyone watching our commercial-free live stream. Thanks for being here. The holidays for many can be a lonely, difficult time. It's why the Canadian Red Cross has a program that pairs volunteers with people struggling with loneliness. Through the Friendly Calls program, trained personnel connect every week with people on the phone, providing them with emotional support and suggesting well-being resources.
From first, I didn't want to speak to a stranger because that's, well, how can I confide all my aches and pains and fears to a stranger? Like, from first I didn't feel good, but after the next call, I was waiting for her call.
The Friendly Calls program is free and available to anyone 18 and older nationwide. We're going to take you now to a place where you can connect with someone who's now gone. We paid a visit to a Victoria cemetery and spoke with a woman who created what's called a Windphone.
A Windphone is essentially a disconnected phone set up somewhere its purpose is to help people connect with loved ones that they've lost. It's not connected to anything, so hence the name Windphone. It's like carrying your words over the wind. The impetus for it was, the loss of my brother and dealing with that really kind of sudden, unexpected loss and feeling lost in how to process that. But I hope that this phone can be used by anyone who's missing somebody. Sitting here in a little secluded wooded area at Royal Oak Burial Park. It's a really lovely spot. You can see the Little Spirits Garden right in front of us. If you were to look kind of out, we're up a little high and you could see a large part of the more like modern area of the burial park. So connect with someone who happens to be buried here that you've lost. You could sort of get a sense of where you were in the park and maybe see their grave, or just kind of look at the area where they are, and that might just help make that connection a little more special. You use it like you would any other phone. We've got a headset here, and there's some buttons, so if you happen to have a phone number you wanted to call, you could do that. And then you just talk. You put the receiver up to your ear and maybe think about the person you want to talk to and just say what you wanted to say to them. Like maybe you're telling them about your day, maybe you're just saying you miss them. There's just something about it that I think just really invites you to pick it up and dial a number and talk to somebody.
If you've come down with the flu, cold, or COVID recently, join the club. Hospitals across Canada are seeing a surge in seasonal viruses. As John Hernandez explains, it's impacting healthcare workers who, after hard pandemic years, are again struggling to keep up.
Sydney Freeston knows it's a bit late to start decorating the tree, but this year she just hasn't had the strength to do it.
Since the end of October, there has barely been a day in which all 4 of the people in my household have been healthy.
Freeston, her husband, and kids all battling a slew of illnesses from colds to strep throat, even COVID-19.
We're 5 days out from Christmas, and we are nowhere near where we normally are at this time.
Health Canada says cases of respiratory illnesses have been on the rise since mid-November nationwide. In Quebec, transmission is showing no signs of slowing down.
The situation over the next few weeks will deteriorate. Let's be clear about that.
Those without urgent illness asked to stay away from emergency rooms as many operate above capacity.
We need all the hospitals to be taking away all the pressure from the emergency. When we reach 200%, we know it's not safe.
Other provinces like BC and Ontario say they are faring better, but aren't immune to health worker shortages.
This is unheard of for emergency doctors to call in sick.
About 22,000 people of the couple of 100,000 who work in the healthcare system who missed at least one day last week.
And with COVID added to annual cold and flu seasons, medical experts say these intense waves of sickness may be the new normal. And annual flu shots and COVID boosters are more important than ever.
We have to have surveillance that shows us what the burden of respiratory infections actually is in our communities, and we have to be able to make individual but also collective decisions.
Health officials say those decisions can be as simple as masking up or sanitizing your hands. But most importantly, if you are sick, just stay home. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
There's a live shot of Woodward's. We are due for a bit more rain on the south coast. Darius will have your BC-wide forecast right after this. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has responded to U.S. claims that his country is behind efforts to kill critics of his government abroad. Modi says he will look at any evidence of an alleged plot to kill a Sikh leader in the U.S. As Ishan Garg reports, this comes 3 months after Modi chastised the Canadian government for making similar claims.
Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi has for the very first time addressed allegations that an Indian official was involved in an assassination attempt on a Sikh activist on US soil. In an interview with the Financial Times, Modi said that this is one issue that India is looking into, but it's not one that is going to derail India-US ties. In the interview, Modi also said that India is deeply concerned about any of the activities of its citizens and added that India-US ties are going from strength to strength. This comes at a time when President Joe Biden has already described India-US ties as one of the most consequential ties in the world right now. This comes even as India has been facing similar accusations from the Canadian government. Just a few months ago, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau alleged that Indian officials were involved in the killing of a Sikh activist in Canada, Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Now, India has said that it has already constituted a panel to look into the allegations made by the US, while for Canada it has said that for several months Canadian officials were unable to provide the Indian government with actionable intelligence. Now, the Indian government does say that allegations like these have posed a concern because these accusations also mean that Indian government has to take another look at its national security policy as well. Now, analysts say that even despite similar allegations coming from both the countries, India has taken a very different approach in dealing with them. With the US, India has shown that it's more forthcoming with its intelligence and also in taking action. But with Canada, the relationship has taken a different turn. More than 41 Canadian diplomats had to leave India, but with America, the relationship has not soured at all. Now, analysts say that India is largely being seen as a counterbalancing power to China in the region, which is why countries like the US are also not taking a stern approach with India, even despite these allegations. conditions. Ashan Kair for CBC News, New Delhi.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox.
For 37 years, British Columbians have been donating to food banks at CBC British Columbia's Food Bank Day, raising more than $18 million for food banks in BC. December 1st kicked off the annual charity drive and continues to the end of the month. We thank you for generously donating and supporting local communities in our province. Make the season kind and donate until December 31st at cbc.ca/foodbankday.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
Time for our BC-wide weather forecast with science and climate specialist Darius Madavi as we turn a bit damp even more.
Yes, that's right. And so I think we should just jump right in because even though there's nothing exciting happening, there is a lot happening. So let's jump in and take a look at our precipitation map. You can see here that there are several systems that are going to be rolling through, bringing what looks like lots of rain and snow to the province. But to be honest, at least as we get later into the week, we're not seeing too much that is going to be too concerning, besides for the north coast, which will get some considerable rainfall, particularly around Prince Rupert, although, not too much out of the ordinary for them. Now, if we look at our accumulation map, you can see plenty of rain and snow on the way, particularly for the north coast there. They see plenty of moisture coming in. For the rest of the province, it looks like scattered showers and flurries. I don't think we'll see too many weather warnings in place as a result of all the snow and rain that's coming in, unless it does happen to fall in some inconvenient places like travel routes. If we zoom into the south coast, you can see not much moisture coming for most of us, and it's really for Vancouver that we start to see potentially some rain that would be coming in early Friday morning. Now, the models do disagree quite a bit on exactly when and whether that rain will come. Some calling for no rain whatsoever, and some calling for quite a bit, up to 20 millimeters. But regardless, they are saying that it will come pretty much before 8 a.m. on Friday, so not too much to worry about in terms of later in the day. And then we do have another system roll in Friday night into Saturday. But as you'd expect, west coast of the island gets quite a bit of rain, east coast not so much. And then if we look at our temperatures, you can see plenty of Arctic air moving down into the province over the next 3 days. But for Vancouver, at least, temperatures don't come down too much until later in the weekend and early next week. Now, again, for conditions, it does look like a lot of precipitation coming, but it actually won't be too bad for most of the provinces, are just scattered and isolated showers for the most part. I do want to mention, as temperatures come down, so will freezing levels, so we may actually see some snow on the local mountains as we get later into the week, but I wouldn't promise it, so to say. And then in terms of our 5-day forecast, we got some morning rain the next couple days, and then not much as we get into the weekend as things start to calm down and cool down.
And Saturday looks to be a little beacon of sun. That'll be nice. And before we go, Darius, this is your last forecast for us before Christmas, taking a well-earned break. Great to have you on the team, pal. Have a wonderful holiday.
Oh, thanks, Dan. It's been the time of my life, with you in particular.
Cheers. And Darius will be back in the new year. That is your late news for Wednesday. Thank you for joining us tonight. For news at any time, check our website, cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition on CBC Radio 1. That starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Have a good night.